Well, a woman passed away. She died. She went to heaven, and she was waiting in line behind another lady right outside the pearly gates. And when they were finally admitted, St. Peter said, you know, okay, heaven is a very big place. Very, very big, so you're going to need some transportation. Before I give you yours, I need to ask you one question. That question is while you were on earth, did you control yourself as a good Christian should? And the first woman said, oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did. I rarely did I ever lie. I never stole anything, hardly ever cursed, and almost every time I was tempted to do something wrong, I resisted the temptation. And Peter kind of nodded his head and got this big old smile on his face and said, well done, well done. Here are the keys to your brand new Cadillac. And it was luxurious. I mean, it was nice. Then Peter asked the second, well, the lady got in her car and she drove off. Well, then Peter asked the second woman if she had always controlled herself while on earth. She said, no. In fact, I hardly ever did. I lied to get my way and I stole to get what I wanted. St. Peter shook his head and said, all right, well, here are the keys to that old, ratty, beat-up 1965 Volkswagen right over there. The lady got in the Volkswagen and took off. Well, she was driving in heaven. She saw this lady in the Cadillac parked to the side, and the lady was crying. Her eyes out. She was just sobbing. What in the world are you crying about? Said the lady in the Volkswagen. I mean, you're driving around in a luxurious Cadillac. You ought to be happy. And the woman looked up and said, yeah, I know. But I just saw my husband go by, and he was riding around on a skateboard. There are rewards for being self-controlled, aren't there? Yeah. None of us are going to end up getting a Cadillac or a Mercedes or a BMW or anything like that in heaven. No, that's not it at all. But I'll tell you what we do receive while we're here on earth, and we have self-control as Christian women and men. And that is, we have the knowledge that we are reflecting Jesus Christ. We have the understanding in our minds that you know what, I'm living the way that Christ wants me to live. Would you agree with me that self-control is not the norm these days, but the exception? Yeah. Last week was Bike Week, and we live not far from the heart of it. And I have to tell you, I have nothing against bikers, but things happened while I was driving during the course of last week, trying to go to this place or that place. And I had to practice a lot of self-control. I mean, weaving in and out, right? You know, you're driving this way, and the other one person driving in here, and here comes this biker right in between you. Woo! Done, right in front of you. Wow. Fact remains that for us Christians, there are so many things that we do need to control. We need to control our anger. We need to control our emotions. We need to control our fears, our doubts. We need to control our eating habits. We need to control our temptations. There are so many important parts of the Christian life that we need to keep under control. And yet there was one area of the Christian life that may be the most important of all to control. You know what that is? Controlling our tongues. Controlling our tongues. The Apostle James would certainly agree. In fact, James devotes 1/5 of his entire letter to the importance of controlling the tongue. He points out that the tongue is one of the smallest parts of the body, yet it is one of the most powerful. He says that just as a bit put in the mouth of a horse can actually control the direction of the horse, and a rudder of a ship, though very small, can direct the course of a very, very, very large ship, and a little teeny tiny spark can ignite a raging forest fire. He says the tongue, though only 2 inches long, has the power to either bless or curse, to build up or tear down. In fact, if used for evil purposes, the tongue can literally destroy somebody. Remember that saying? As kids, we all learned it. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Brothers and sisters, nothing could be further from the truth than that. Words can hurt. They can hurt deeply. Yesterday I was doing some research on the message here, and I learned that an average of 48,300 Americans commit suicide in the United States every year. I wonder how many of those are caused by lies, gossip, rumors, harsh, brutal words spoken to other people. One of my pastor friends once told me about a woman in the church he pastored who, out of her own unhappiness, she just really seemed to really like inflicting unhappiness on other people. I don't know if you've ever met somebody like that, but I have. This lady loved to gossip. One day she got really very upset with her pastor. And she started spreading nasty rumors about him in the church and around the community. Now, none of them were in any way, shape, or form true. They were all lies. But with gossip, it doesn't matter. You see, it doesn't have to be true to be juicy. And she found a few friends who were willing to help spread those nasty lies and rumors in the church and around the community. And I must tell you that my friend is no longer in the ministry. Not because he did anything wrong or said anything wrong, but because this lady couldn't control her mouth. She couldn't control her tongue. And she didn't care who would hurt. The tongue can be very, very powerful. James understood that because he saw its effects upon the early church. There were people in the early church who loved to gossip. Some of them even gossiped about Paul. We're not sure, but they may have said things like, so-and-so told me that Paul really is not a converted Christian. He's really not. He's just faking it. And one day, he's going to show his true colors, and he's going to destroy the church. You just wait and see. There were people who gossiped about others who didn't share the same gifts. Pick that up in 1 Corinthians 13. They would say things like, hey, can you believe that some of our elders have never spoken in tongues? I heard that the minister down the street tried to heal somebody the other day, and he just couldn't do it. He couldn't do it because he didn't have enough faith. I'd never go to a church like that. Oh, a friend of 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 mine told me that there's a single woman in the church who just wrote a check for a brand new pulpit. Rumor has it that she has a thing for the chairman of the Building Grounds Committee, and he's a married man. Now, don't you think that Satan was having a field day with that? Because a few people in the early church would not control their tongues, lives were destroyed, and the church was often sidetracked from doing what we're called to do, and that's to preach and teach and share the gospel. They were sidetracked from doing that and sidetracked from taking care of the poor. Today would be like a church member spreading rumors like this. Did you see Kristen Brinkerhoff at worship today? She looks so pretty, so beautiful. And she's much, much, much younger than Austin is. There's no way, absolutely no way that they can really love each other. Oh, and Sam and Eleanor, I heard they're getting a divorce. And it's probably because Sam is having an affair with another woman. Did you see Karen last Sunday at church? Why, I just know I smelled alcohol on her breath. And she smelled like cigarettes. Oh my goodness, I know she's got an alcohol and a drinking problem. And a cigarette problem. The tongue, my brothers and sisters, has the power to bless or to curse. It has the power to build up or to tear down. With just a few words, we can literally make somebody feel like $1,000,000. And with just a few words, we can make somebody feel like trash. The late theologian R.C. Sproul once told about a middle-aged woman who came to him for counseling. This woman couldn't seem to let her husband love her because she thought that she was too unattractive to be loved. She told Dr. Sproul about a time when she was a teenager. She had acne all over her face, and she had these big old thick corrective glasses, and she had silver braces on her teeth. And one day as she was walking across the schoolyard, she heard one of the most popular boys in school say, "Hey, you know, she'd be all right if she just covered her face so you didn't have to look at her." Those words pierced this young lady like a dagger. They crushed her heart and they crushed her spirit. In fact, she felt so ugly for the next 20 years she carried this poem in her pocket wherever she went. This is what it said. "If love is blind and those who love can't see, then why in the world doesn't someone love me?" Years later, after the acne was gone and the glasses were replaced with contact lenses and the braces were off, the power of those hurtful words continued to bring her down. Did you know that psychologists tell us that it takes 9 positive affirmations to make up for one hurtful remark? In my opinion, it takes a lot more than that. I believe sometimes it takes 50 or 100 positive affirmations to get over that one stinging, biting, hurting comment. Over the years, I've talked to several people, counseled several people who have said that negative comments they heard growing up still haunt them. It's like they have painful tapes running throughout their minds. They're looping, reminding them of those times when maybe their parents, or maybe an acquaintance, or maybe a teacher, or maybe somebody else said things like, "You know something, you're no good. You're stupid. You'll never amount to anything. Nobody will ever love you." Oh, and this is the worst of all. "I wish you were never born." Those tapes run through their minds. You can't turn them off. And some people spend the rest of their lives wanting to be loved, but never believing that they are actually good enough to be loved because of the hurtful, destructive words that they have heard. But I ask you this. What if the tapes that were running through their minds, the tapes that were looping, said, "I love you. You're so smart. I'm so proud of you. I am so grateful that God made you just like you are. You are one of a kind. I think you're wonderful. You are a gift from God." What a difference that would make, don't you think? Don't you think? There's an old proverb about 3 ways to test the value of words that we speak. The first test is this. Ask yourselves, is it true? Is it true? Is it true or is it just a rumor? Would I be willing for the person that you're talking about or I'm talking about to be standing right next to us as we're saying it? If not, don't say it. Question, is it true? Second, is it necessary? It's very important. Is it necessary? Even if it is true, is it necessary to say it? Is it necessary to repeat it? Brothers and sisters, some things are better kept to ourselves. Is it really necessary to mention it? Number 3, is it kind? Is it kind? Will it build somebody up or will it tear them down? If it's going to tear somebody down, what good is it to say? Why say it in the first place? That's not Christian. That is of the evil one. So, is it kind? And I'm going to add a fourth. Is it Christ-like? All of us here today, and hopefully those who will see this online or hear it, are Christians, right? Ask yourself this question. Is what you're about to say and what I'm about to say worthy of Jesus Christ? Does it give a good reflection of Jesus Christ himself? Does it reflect who Christ is and who Christ wants us to be? You see, the words we speak can either bless or curse. They can lift up or put down. They can build up or destroy. In fact, the words we speak can literally change the course of a person's life. That's how powerful they are. Let me close with this. Around the turn of the 20th century, there were two young men who were Catholic altar boys. The first was named Joseph Bross, who lived in a tiny village in Croatia. And one day, Joseph was chosen from all the other altar boys to carry the cup of communion wine up to the parish priest during Mass. Well, as Joseph was carrying the cup, he stumbled and accidentally dropped it right there in front of the priest. And you can imagine the cup of communion had wine and fell to the floor, and it broke into a whole bunch of different pieces, and wine went everywhere. It was the most embarrassing moment of Joseph Brous's life. And to make matters worse, the priest, right in front of everybody, drew back his arm and he smacked Joseph Brouse right across the face, once again in front of everybody. And then he said, "You get out of here. You get out of here right now, and don't you ever come back." But Joseph Brouse never did come back. In fact, his angry words of humiliation drove him away from the church for the rest of his life. And get this. Later on, he became known as Marshal Tito, the oppressive, murderous, communist dictator of Yugoslavia. Now, about the same time, in another part of the world, a similar drama was unfolding. There was a young man who was an altar boy at St. Mary's Cathedral in Peoria, Illinois. And he too was chosen from all the other altar boys to carry the communion wine on the day that the Bishop of Illinois was conducting Mass. And guess what? The exact same thing happened. As he was carrying this cup of communion wine up to the priest, he stumbled and he dropped it right there in front of the priest. And the communion cup hit the floor and it smashed into 100 pieces and wine went all over the place. But this time the reaction of the priest was much different. The bishop, whose name was John Spalding, you know what he did? He just smiled at the young boy and he calmly said, "It's okay," in front of everybody. "It's okay. It's all right. Don't worry about it. We all do stuff. Don't worry about it. Oh, and by the way, I see in you that someday you're going to be a great man of God. You really are." Right in front of everybody, he said. And you know something? Bishop Spalding was right. For that young boy, when he grew up, he went on to write 50 books on the Christian faith. And he originated the first Christian television program in America. Today we know him as Bishop Fulton J. Sheen. And for the rest of his days, Bishop Sheen said that it was those blessed words, those loving, kind words of encouragement that made the presence of God so real for him and literally changed the direction of his life. Brothers and sisters, the tongue is just that powerful. It can bless and it can curse. It can build up and it can rip apart. So I ask you, what will your words be like this week? mine be like? No, more than that. What will your words, what will my words be like every day that God has planned for us on this earth? Will they affirm, will they encourage, or will they hurt and destroy? Will they comfort, or will they criticize? Please understand this. To the person who hears them, what you say, what I say, how you say it, how I say it, could very well make all the difference in the world. Not just now, but for the rest of their lives. For the rest of their lives. Let's pray together, please. Father, teach us to control our tongues. Teach us to control our tempers. Teach us to control our temptations, our fears, our doubts, our emotions, our reactions to those who hurt us. Father, teach us to be more like Jesus in every way, so that when others see us, they would see him who lives within us and through us, all for your glory and honor. In Christ's name we pray, and the children of God say, Amen.